Well, hi there, this is Madeline, and today I'm really excited to talk about A Dream to Fly, a one-woman play inspired by the life and times of Bessie Coleman, the world's first black woman aviator. Now, why I'm smiling is because I've had the privilege for the past years now to perform her life story on stages around the country. And now that we are working up toward the Black History Month and Women's History Month, it's usually a pretty big time for performances that address history and great leaders and great legacies. I am really empowered myself whenever I have an opportunity to not just perform her life story, but to really be reminded of how much this woman, this particular pioneer leader, did to transform and to change the lives of people, to motivate and to inspire people to become interested in an industry that was brand new. When Bessie Coleman decided to be a pilot, it was back during the Jim Crow era. And now, here's the thing. When I learned about Bessie Coleman, let me just digress for a moment. When I learned about Bessie Coleman was around about 1986. And a friend of mine, an actor friend of mine at the time, mentioned to me about, why not create my own vehicle as a creative person, as an actress, to not be dependent so much on waiting for my phone to ring with agents or casting directors, but to really create something and to maybe think about creating something that on one of our historic leaders, and he happened to mention the name Bessie Coleman. Well, I'd never heard of her, and so when he explained that she was the first black woman to fly an airplane, I obviously got very intrigued about that topic, because I thought, wow, where was this story in the history books? And why don't I hear people talking about it now? And so what I did was I set out to conduct some research. Now, don't forget, I'm talking 1986, 1987, and during that time, for a story that dynamic, there was still nothing available on her life. And I did discover one article that had been written up in Essence magazine. It was around 1977 is when the article was done. I started to then put pen to paper, try to recreate a story, but I really didn't feel like I was being honest because I was taking way too much creative license at the time. And when someone has lived and breathed and walked the earth and done something so spectacular, and you know that they did it during a time in which there were so many difficulties, that I personally feel that you owe it to them to really give credit to what their life was truly like. So I kept on attempting to find something, and finally I did. I went to the Schomburg Center for Research on Black Culture in Harlem, where I was born, right across the street, ironically. And it was there that I uncovered what I always like to call a treasure trove of information, articles from way back in the day. Unfortunately, there was no real footage of her because, believe it or not, during that time, and I'll explain this in a second, her footage was destroyed due to the fact that she was in France. Now, this is why her story is so exciting and her life meant so much. And that is because here's a woman who was born dirt poor, and matter of fact, so dirt poor on a dirt floor inside a cabin in Atlanta, Texas in 1892. And who rose up from picking cotton in the fields with her mother and her father and her siblings to being the kind of curious spirit that was obviously put on this earth to do something that was absolutely amazing. And so through many trials and tribulations, she wound up in Chicago in 1915. and her brother had gone to France to fight during that time. And when he returned home, he ended up teasing Bessie a bit about whether or not black women, in his language, quite frankly, wasn't that nice, but that women of color, black women, didn't have the courage to do what the French women were doing at the time, which was flying airplanes. Bessie was the kind of spirit that she knew she had this inner drive, this life that burned with a passion that she sort of in the beginning didn't quite know exactly what to do with. But when her brother John actually challenged her in that way, suddenly it became very clear what she wanted to do, and then it became what she needed desperately to do, because she had the kind of vision that she understood what aviation was going to mean in the future, even though it was brand new at the time. But here she is living in Chicago. It's, it's like 1919, and clearly there was no race equality. There was certainly no gender equality at that time. And here she is now with this notion in her head that she's going to go around and she's going to find a school that will accept her in that climate and teach her how to fly. Well, needless to say that it didn't happen. But she didn't let it stop her. She was so determined to do what she set out to do that she found a benefactor, Robert S. Abbott, in Chicago, who owned the Chicago Weekly Defender. And he believed in her. He believed in her. And everybody needs someone to believe in them. And he saw what this could mean for the race, how important it would be if, wow, and not only that it be a member of the race, but a woman, oh my God, who had the nerve to say that this is what she wanted to do. And it was obviously a very risky thing to do, because today when we see these huge aircrafts, we think of that, but these people literally flew around in things that were made of basically very hard cardboard, paper, and wire. But I'm not going to talk too much about that right now, but I did want to just mention what it meant in terms of being a life-threatening career to pursue, right? Dream to pursue. So anyway, so Bessie Abbott found an accredited aviation school for Bessie to where she could go in France, and that's what she did. She learned to speak a little French, and she went over to France, where she was taught by people who didn't care about the color of her skin, who didn't. It didn't matter that she was a woman. These were true pioneers, true aviation enthusiasts, and all they cared about was whether or not you truly wanted to be a part of that industry, whether you wanted to be a part of that history that was being made at that time. And actually, Europe was ahead of America in the development of aviation anyway. So that's a little bit of a backstory on that, and I wanted to just I get very emotional at times when I think about it, because her story is even so much bigger than just the accomplishment of becoming the first female black pilot in the world. And even though that even in and of itself was more than enough. But here was a woman that was making this sacrifice, not just for herself. No, she actually wanted the African American community. She wanted black people to be a part of aviation, and she saw herself as the person that was going to burst open those doors for the entire race, because she didn't want other young people to experience what she had experienced. And quite naturally, the fear factor stood in the way of most people, and they did not take to her thoughts in the beginning, but she also didn't let that stop her. She toured and giving lectures around the country, and began to think what it would mean to teach young people, because young people have something inside of them that other people, perhaps older people in her generation, and by the way, she was very young, didn't have necessarily. And so her design, she set her sights on teaching young people, and as it applies to me, the artist who wrote A Dream to Fly, inspired by her life story, my favorite audience is young people, young minds. I absolutely love being able to instill through performance an emotional connection that leads one to understand that whatever it is that you set your mind to, that you, as long as you put the work behind it and the passion and the dream, the fury of that dream, that you can absolutely make that come true. And so I think about those characteristics, those qualities in this woman, this human being, and so the story becomes more about how we live today, and it speaks to so many areas. It speaks to her physical prowess. Today we're looking at so many people who are unhealthy and can't seem to accomplish the things that they set out to do, in part because they don't have the energy, they don't have the stamina, and they don't have the thought clarity. Not only did Bessie Coleman fly an airplane, but like most early aviators who were trying to raise money, she also was a barnstormer, and these are the people who did these amazing feats in the air. They would they would do wing walking. That's when you climb on outside the wings of the plane as it's being flown and balance yourself along the wing. Now, obviously, that required a great deal of physical fitness, and that's and not to mention the level of focus and concentration that was required to do that, as was to fly a plane. And it's the same way today, quite frankly. I mean, anything that one sets out to do, especially when it is a very high-risk career, you definitely need to have focus, the ability to focus, and the clarity of thought in order to do that. So there are these, she was really an athlete. Bessie Coleman was really an athlete. And so her life, her story, and what we stand to gain by being familiar with the entire scope of who she was and what she did will enable anyone, and this is what my favorite part is, it enables anyone. It certainly does keep me grounded as I challenge myself to do these things that I've embarked upon in my own life, my entrepreneurial endeavors. Whenever I get tired, and I do get tired, like everyone else does, and whenever the thought crosses my mind about, my goodness, this is so challenging, I'm blessed to be able to reach back into the recess of my own mind and say, no, there is no such thing as giving up. There is no such thing as letting go of the dream. And there is no such thing as not believing enough in myself to know that I have the ability to succeed at whatever it is that I set my mind to. And that is the focus of A Dream to Fly, inspired by the life and times of Bessie Coleman. It is when I step onto that stage and I ask that she join me there in spirit, it is to absolutely have the audience have an experience that they can walk away with. It doesn't matter young or old, black or white. I don't care who sits there. My only goal is to have everyone walk away feeling as though you are able to do anything that you put your mind and your heart and your soul into. So that was my moment of sharing. I just really wanted to make sure that I didn't forget to honor this woman. And as a matter of fact, she has a birthday coming up this month, so I'm doing a lot of, reliving certain aspects that I don't often talk about. So there will be more about the life of Bessie Coleman. And this has been Madeline McCray, and I look forward to, and I hope that whenever I have a chance to be in your area, that you will be able to get out and see the show wherever it is that I'm performing at the time. And that's that. So as always, as I say, feel free to send me a Facebook friend request. I would love to connect with you. And in the meantime, just get out there and create your awesome life. It's so wonderful to be alive. It's so wonderful to be able to wrap your arms around whatever it is that you dream to dream and get out there and grab your shiny star. Okay? Take care. Ciao for now.